Just because the regular season is over does not mean that fantasy football is over. We dig into the best and worst daily fantasy football plays of Wildcard Weekend on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So Prize Picks is one way you can enjoy your wild card weekend, right? Or you can go over on FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever you want to use, and play some daily fantasy football. Because the second that fantasy football is over, we're like, oh, I miss it. And we got to wait till September again to play the regular fantasy, but you can still make your lineups over on, whatever daily fantasy football app you want to use. Today, we're going to be using FanDuel's pricing, but we're going to give you our favorite plays at running back, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and then also our least favorite plays at each of those positions as well. So let's start with our favorite running back play of the week, Vinny. Who is your guy that you're going with that you want in your lineup this week?
Yeah, I'm going with a little bit of a value return on investment. I'm going Bucky Irving of the Buccaneers, the rookie who led all rookies in rushing yards in the regular season. He's at 7,600, so I like that price. I think that's how the Buccaneers are going to have to win this game because I don't think they want to get into a high-scoring affair with the Commanders. This could be a lot of points on the board. We have Austin Eckler back as another weapon here with Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz. Eckler had a big game in the first one. I think the Buccaneers need to control the clock a little bit, keep that Commanders offense off the field. And Irving has been very effective. When they played way back in week one, he was a rookie and he wasn't really used. And now he's a big part of what they do offensively, right up there with Baker Mayfield throwing downfield to Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan. So I think Irving has a nice game here. I think he can put together 100 in the score, and I'll be really good in investment and return there from Irving. And if he catches a few balls, that'll pad the stats a little bit, but I do like it 7,600 against the Commanders at home.
Yeah, I like the Buccaneers offense just in general. And even if Baker has a good game, I mean, Bucky Irving and him have had good games, like plenty of times, especially as of late. So it doesn't mean that one has to have a good one and the other can't. So love Bucky there. And he's a lot cheaper than my guy, $2,000 less, actually. Saquon Barkley. It might seem lame that I'm going with Saquon Barkley, but I want him in my lineups and he is insanely expensive. So people might be scared. $9,600 on FanDuel, second among running backs behind Derrick Henry, but I would actually much prefer Saquon Barkley this week to Derrick Henry. Yeah. I'm willing to pay this price for him to pay up for this running back because the Eagles are running at a historical rate this season. They have ran the ball 621 times this year, 67 more times than any other team this season. And that's the most by any team in a single season since the 1984 Chicago Bears. And every time Barkley has faced the Packers in his career, he has been fantastic. He's had over 100 yards and a touchdown, at least 2 touchdowns in all 4 games against the Packers. 100 yards and 2 touchdowns each of his last 2 games, week 1 in 2024 and week 14, 2023. So just each of the last 2 seasons. So I'm all in on him. Just in week 1, we saw him go off for 132 scrimmage yards and 3 touchdowns against the Packers. I want to pay up for him.
Yeah, week 1 kind of was the jumpstart to this special season where he ran for more than 2,000 yards. Ended up not winning the touchdown lead. There you had Derrick Henry and James Cook do that, but partly because he had Jalen Hurts stealing a lot of goal line touchdowns, or he probably would have got that too. So again, he's well rested. They didn't have to play him. They didn't go for the record there, which was 2,105 rushing yards. They did not do that, and they rested him. So he should be ready to go in this game, ready for a full workload that he's gotten. More than 23 touches per game was his average during the season. So you're going to unleash him. And I think the other thing that you should look at in this game, I don't know how competitive the Packers are going to be, honestly. When I look at this matchup, it's tough. Jordan Love comes in banged up. The receivers are iffy beyond Christian Watson, who's hurt. You also have tough matchups for the tight end, and it's a really tough Jacobs matchup as well. So where are they going to move the ball? So the Eagles could be in control of this one, which would only make them run heavier in this game in the second half. I think they can throw a little bit to get a lead, and then they can pull away with the run, and Saquon Barkley can have a huge second half. So I love that pick by you. Why not? I mean, he's provided return on investment plenty of times before. He can definitely put up a 28-point game.
Absolutely. Like I'm expecting him to be the top running back scorer this week, and we know like he can win you a week. So I'm willing to pay up. Now, who's your least favorite running back play of the week where you're not having him in any of your daily fantasy lineups this week?
Yeah, I think it's in the very first game. We have Joe Mixon against the Chargers. This is for playing Saturday, Sunday, Monday slates, which is more fun. You get a few more games versus playing main slate, so to speak, and only one of the days here. So that's how I'm looking at it as well. I would like to get in on the action for all the days. And Joe Mixon is it, 7,500. We talked about him on the show, fading and not looking good here at the end of his first season in Houston. The Chargers, again, we talked about the Ravens and Eagles being a very tough matchup. We know that Jacobs is going to get one of them. Your guy might get the other, but the Chargers is also pretty tough here with Joe Mixon, and the trends are not good. They're also underdogs in this game. 2.5 points was the latest spread there on FanDuel, so we don't expect them to play with the lead. CJ Stroud could struggle in this game. It could be a lower scoring affair for the Texans side. So not a lot of upside there with either yardage or touchdowns for Joe Mixon in this game. And 7,500, way too expensive when you can get some better deals right around him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting the Texans to have a great offensive performance at all. And Joe Mixon has faded greatly over the second half of the season. Now, my guy, he hasn't faded. He just really hasn't done anything all year long. It's Najee Harris against the Ravens at 6,000, 12th among running backs. Again, this is for the full slate, Saturday through Monday, all the games. But like, I don't expect him to be the 12th highest scoring running back, even though there's only 12 teams playing, right? The Steelers have just completely stripped away his playing time and workload over the back half of the season. He's playing just 42% of the team's snaps from weeks 12 through 18. He played 56% of the snaps from weeks 1 through 11. He's had 13 or fewer carries in each of the last 4 games of the season. And he's just been highly inefficient on the ground, not just this year, his entire career, right? Like he's just never been an efficient runner. The Ravens have allowed by far the fewest yards per carry to running backs this season. And we just saw him play in Baltimore like 3 weeks ago in week 16. He scored 4.2 fantasy points. He had only 9 carries, 0 receptions. I'm not touching Najee Harris. He needs a touchdown just to score what? 11 points? Like I'm not touching him.
Yeah, and especially if you're playing a tournament, you absolutely cannot touch him. It's not like a contrarian smart play. You're just going to be disappointed and just waste your spot there in the lineup. And yeah, for Najee Harris, he's one of those players in DFS, and there's a lot of them where I just look at it, I just scroll past or scroll up, scroll down. I'm not touching that price point with Najee Harris. So we'll get into some wide receivers in our next segment. So I'm excited to do that because it's again, plenty of our favorite guys and some guys who may struggle this week as well.
Yeah, we'll get into that right after we take a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You get to buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. So easy to use. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantees, and even job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets at Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, you redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL. For $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, both of our favorite wide receiver plays of the week are from the same game, but opposite teams. So, Vinnie, you start with your favorite DFS wide receiver play of the week.
Yeah, it's Terry McLaurin of the Commanders. So we're going back to that game. Why not? That could be the highest scoring game. Two defenses that have, let's say, a fair share of issues, and also two offenses that are very well coached and can play off the run, throw deep, all that good stuff. So I'm going to Terry McLaurin again. This secondary for the Bucks, I mean, it's not all that great. I mean, they have Jamel Dean, but he's been banged up, and you have Zion McCollum. He's not all that great. And Terry McLaurin, when he has a very good matchup, he tends to destroy it. And when he has a bad matchup, he tends to disappear, or the Commanders forget about it, and they just say, we're going to throw to Olamide Zaccheaus and all these other receivers and just not force the ball into Terry McLaurin, which is probably a smart plan. But in this particular game, they didn't need to hold back. They needed their best receiver to show up. As we saw, he'd had a huge season here with Jaden Daniels. He just needed somebody who was going to unlock him in the downfield passing game, allow him to make big plays, throw him in the red zone, and all these things that we thought Terry McLaurin couldn't do, suddenly he can do once he gets a quarterback who can get him the ball in these situations. So I think high scoring, I could easily see a situation where the Commanders are having to throw a ton in this game. The Bucks take a lead, put Jane Daniels in a hole, all that stuff here. So I could see that, but I could also see it go back and forth and a lot of points. So I like it either way. 7,700 for Terry McLaurin at Tampa Bay.
I really like McLaurin this week too. And I do fully expect this to be a high scoring game. That's why I have a wide receiver on the Buccaneers. And no, it's not Mike Evans. It is Jalen McMillan, who's much cheaper than Mike Evans. He's at 6,400. Now still 14th among wide receivers. So just past that, that wide receiver one cost. But I fully expect him to have the better game than Mike Evans, right? Like Mike Evans is going to get that Marshawn Lattimore matchup. And Lattimore practiced in full yesterday. Seems like he's good to go. We know how strong of a matchup this is. I mean, one of these guys might get kicked out of this game. We've seen it now multiple times, but these two are going to go at it all game long. They'll each get theirs. And then McMillan on the other side is just going to be, dealing with either Benjamin St. Juste or the rookie Mike Centrell. And it's like, he has some much favorable matchups for Baker to target instead of targeting Lattimore and dealing with that. But McMillan has been really great. I mean, he's had at least 50 receiving yards and a touchdown in 5 straight games. He's played a career high 88% of snaps in week 18. And he leads the NFL with 7 receiving touchdowns since week 14. And he's the only player with more than 5 during that span. So McMillan's been on fire. He gets a much more favorable matchup than Mike Evans. And I think he will get at least 8 targets in this game. So I really like McMillan's price. And I think he can finish as a top 8-7 scorer at the wide receiver position this week.
Yeah, that was a very good pivot the Buccaneers made as they realized Evans was getting a lot of attention without Chris Godwin, who was having a big year, one of his best years when he went down again with injury. And then they said, okay, we're going to unleash McMillan a little bit more. We need that consistent next receiver. It's not Sterling Shepard. And then what also happened while he was going off is K. Dotton got hurt. So then he kind of established himself as the go-to second target on this team pretty quickly. And it just happened very fast to the point where it made Baker Mayfield get to that 40 touchdown mark as well. So that's how special McMillan was down the stretch. Again, McLaurin, however you want to do it. If you get both of these guys in your lineup, we would be okay with that this week for sure. But there's some guys I think we do not want to touch in our wide receiver lineups.
Yeah, and I'll go here first. And one of mine's Quentin Johnson. Like, he's pricey at 6,300, not like super pricey. He's just below Jalen McMillan at 15th. But again, like I trust Jalen McMillan way more than Quentin Johnson, right? And Quentin Johnson does not have a nice matchup. It's against the Texans, who have allowed the second fewest passing yards per attempt and the lowest completion percentage in the league in the 2024 season. And they're really good against the deep ball. They've allowed just 20% of deep pass attempts to be completed this season. That's the fewest in the NFL. I think Ladd McConkey will be just fine in the slot, right? He has a nicer matchup in the slot, but Johnson's going to see a lot of Derek Stingley Jr., who's just a good corner. And when he does get beat, he's going to do a pass interference call, right? Like he's going to make sure you don't catch the ball. At least Quentin Johnson went off in week 18, went absolutely off, but we never really seen that from him before. And the weeks prior, he was playing plenty of snaps. He just wasn't really doing anything. So I'm not going to just jump on his week 18 performance against the Raiders. I don't think he's going to, have a great game, and I'm not paying that price for him.
Yeah, you make a really good point. It's two young players going at it here with Stingley and Johnston. I think Stingley can win that battle. He's an aggressive corner, as you mentioned. He's going to get physical with him. He's going to do some things to disrupt his routes early so he can't get deep and make those big plays. And it's also going to be tough to get the ball to him in the red zone, which are two things that Quentin Johnson does well. Now, my guy is a little bit more high profile, but actually not that much more expensive, which is surprising. He's 7,100 on FanDuel. It's Courtland Sutton of the Broncos. Now, everyone made a big deal of Courtland Sutton breaking 1,000 yards. And it was a great season because we didn't have any hopes for Courtland Sutton. He ends up as a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. He just was terrible. And we didn't think he was going to do anything away from Russell Wilson. But then Bo Nix kind of reheated Courtland Sutton, reminded us that he was a pretty good talent. First 1,000-yard season in a while there in Denver since Emmanuel Sanders and the late Demaryius Thomas were there. So when you look at that, I mean, that's a great season. But this is not a great matchup. You have Christian Benford. He's excellent corner. If they have to go to the other side, I don't think you'll see it as much with Russell Douglas, but they're also tough in the slot with Teron Johnson. So however you line up Sutton is going to be tough. I mean, usually Devon Vele is in the slot. So Sutton is probably going to get that tough matchup. They're going to say, we got to take him out of the game to disrupt Bo Nix, get him out of his comfort zone with the receiver he trusts the most. So on the outside, you would expect Benford to be on Sutton, and Benford has been lights out this year. He's been great. The Bills are a great pass defense. In general, pressure up front could also hurt Nix from getting the ball to Sutton. So however you look at it, back end, front end, this matchup altogether is pretty bad here for the Broncos offense on the road.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I would have had Courtland Sutton here, but you stole him from me first, and that's okay. You're right. Like, Benford's a great corner. He's allowed the fewest receiving yards in coverage among all corners that have played at least 500 coverage snaps, and that's 39 cornerbacks. So first in that. Patrick Surtain is second, and we give Patrick Surtain all this credit, like, oh gosh, you can't play wide receivers against him, but Christian Benford has even been a more lockdown guy, and especially like players playing in Buffalo, they've allowed just 3 wide receivers to score more than 11 fantasy points against them at home this entire year. And there's only been 1 to score more than 14 points. Weirdly enough, it was Kayshon Boutte. I don't expect Courtland Sutton to have a good game. I also don't expect Bo Nix to have a good game. And spoiler alert, he might be my least favorite play at the quarterback position. But let's get to our quarterbacks, our tight ends, our favorite and least favorite plays of Wildcard Weekend right after we take a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets, see same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit now and check out what bets they have for the wildcard weekend. The one I like in particular, we just talked about this game, Broncos-Bills, bad matchup for the Broncos in Buffalo. The Bills are 8.5-point favorites. I like them to take care of that number in this game. So that is definitely the lock we're looking for. So that is where I'm going this week. So good stuff all around here with that. And look, it is a good time to get in on the action because, again, you get those 6 wildcard games. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's only at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're down to closing our show already. We will come back with you and have some more DFS advice tomorrow. So we'll do our regular show there with our lineups and prize picks and sleepers and all that good stuff. So we'll do that still here for the wild card playoff round because we still have those 6 games. Now we'll get into our quarterbacks right now. Let's start on the good side first. So Michelle, I think we know where you might be leaning based on what we've talked about before with these receivers, but who's your favorite quarterback play of the week?
It has to be Baker Mayfield. His cost at $7,900 when you're doing the full slate of Saturday through Monday games. He's the 5th most expensive quarterback, but that's a great price for him, right? Because he's finished as a top 5 quarterback scorer in 3 of the last 5 weeks. And that's with that's with all the teams playing, right? And now there's only 12 starting quarterbacks playing, and now he's the 5th most expensive out of 12. That doesn't make any sense with how good he's been. So I think he's a steal at his price, and he's a really nice matchup for him against this Commanders defense. Yes, Lattimore does make the Commanders defense better, but he has other weapons that he can go to. And Mike Evans will win. It's not like win some of the battles. It's not like he's going to get completely shut down by Lattimore. And Mayfield has averaged 22 fantasy points per game at home this season. He scored 30 fantasy points against the Commanders in week 1, where he put up 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and nearly 300 passing yards. I expect this to be a high scoring game, like I said. So I think at his price, compared to the other expensive guys like Jaden Daniels, who are even more expensive, like I'm just going with Baker, who's also been taking off and running all of a sudden, like 42 rushing yards, 68 rushing yards in 2 of the last 3 games. Anytime he gets pressure now, he's like, all right, I'll just take off and run. And I love that. That's just extra fantasy points.
Yeah, he's feeling it right now. And he's a little bit dissed and disrespected. There's a Cliff Kingsbury angle on the other side. He's always had a chip on his shoulder against Kingsbury going back to the Texas Tech days. And when Baker has a chip on his shoulder and he plays with some moxie, he usually delivers some fantasy points with that. So that's good news for him, this particular matchup. And the matchup is great. And then you look on my side of things, we're going to Monday. Yes, I'm diving finally into the Monday game. So trying to get you to play the Saturday, Sunday, Monday slate here. It is Matthew Stafford against the Vikings. Last time he just lit up the Vikings. I mean, I was surprised with that Thursday night game early this season, and it actually came, weirdly enough, after the Vikings lost to the Lions. So here we go, repeating a little history that they have to go out to Los Angeles. And we know the Vikings pass defense has stunk all season in terms of giving up wide receiver big plays. Again, they're a little bit better in the slot with Byron Murphy Jr., but they stink on the outside. They made big plays downfield last time. Puka Nacua should have a pretty big game as well this week. So it just lines up. And if the Vikings are ahead, Matthew Stafford will be throwing a lot. Again, we talked about, could this be his last game with Cooper Kupp? He's not going to want to go out on a low. He's going to throw it out and let it fly as much as he can. In potentially could be his last game, and it's supposed to be a close game. I mean, the spread has been around 1 to 2 points all week long, so expect another competitive game between these two teams. And again, however you look at it, this matchup is very good for his receivers, and that adds up to a very good matchup for Stafford at 7,100 against Minnesota at home on FanDuel Monday.
I love this. Stafford's one of my, like, the sleeper. If you want to go cheap, I think it has to be Stafford, right? And if you go cheap with him, then you can stack him with Puka Nacua, who's like the top 3 most expensive wide receiver this week. But I do expect Puka to have a great week. We saw Stafford and Puka tear up the Vikings earlier in the year. I mean, that's one of their 3 losses, right? 2 of them came against the Lions and 1 against the Rams. Now, Stafford has been struggling as of late, but if they have any chance to win this game, Stafford's going to have to show up. He has a playoff experience. I don't expect him to just fall flat on his face. He got the week off, and I do expect Puka and Stafford to have a good week. It's a question mark in Cooper Kupp if he can come back to life, but I like your Stafford pick here. Now, my least favorite quarterback play of the week, I already said, I already gave it to you earlier, but it's Bo Nix at the Bills at 7,500, 9th most expensive quarterback. Now, that's 9th among 12 starting quarterbacks. So you might say that's a really good price for Bo Nix because he's been so good, right, his rookie season. But he's been so good at home his rookie season. On the road, no. I mean, his splits are drastically different. He averages 250 passing yards per game at home, only 196 away, 7.6 passing yards per attempt at home, 5.8 per attempt away, only 10 passing touchdowns in away games to 19 at home, and only 16 fantasy points per game in away games this year. Well, the Bills have not allowed a quarterback to hit 18 fantasy points in any game against them at home this season. And then the real kicker is that only 1 rookie quarterback in NFL history has scored more than 15 fantasy points on the road in the wild card round. And that was Russell Wilson in the 2012 wild card round. He scored 20 fantasy points. That's the most ever. Only 2 have ever scored more than 11 fantasy points on the road. So in a wild card round. So history says Bo Nix is going to struggle. The Bills defense is good at home. Nix is not good away. All those things line up to I'm not touching him in daily fantasy football.
Yep, good call by you all around. Again, I like the Bills the most. Like, I would feel secure if I had to go for any kind of survivor pool or lock. I would go with them this week at home against Denver. Now, mine is A little cheaper, which is surprising because he's a bigger name, but still another guy I'm going to avoid here. Again, these guys, Nick's at 7,500, my guy 7,200, Jordan Love, more expensive than Matthew Stafford. Then you look right above, Bayfield is not that much more. It's 7,900. So yeah, you can go up, you can go down, you can find better values than Bo Nix and my guy Jordan Love. I just do not like this matchup at all. The Eagles defense is much tougher than the one they saw in Brazil way back in week 1. I mean, you have Cooper DeJean out there, so that's probably not good for Jaden Reed. You're looking at a very tough running back matchup. Christian Watson's not available, so you could see Romeo Doubs facing a lot of Quinyon Mitchell. It doesn't matter. You have Darius Slade, too, another tough matchup. The pressure is pretty good that they can bring here. They're tough in the middle of the field in coverage as well, with Zach Bond roaming at linebacker, so it could be hard to get the ball to Tucker Kraft. So I don't see a lot of paths to the Packers having a lot of offensive success in this game, to be honest with you, because it's going to be one-dimensional, I think. The Eagles can take a lead. They can stop the run, and Jordan Love is going to be put in a lot of tough situations. Now, we've seen Jordan Love have those ugly games, right, where he goes 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. It could happen, but you're not going to get the return on investment getting it done that way. 203 with like 3 picks and some other things are not going to do it for you with Jordan Love and give you that return of a 2,600 or 21,600, I should say, to get 3 extra returns. So not on Jordan Love at all this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a big surprise if the Packers offense can come out and put up, 30 points on this Eagles defense. I think we'd all be shocked. We're definitely expecting, Eagles to take control of this game. So I like that pick by you. Now we're each going to pick our favorite tight end play of the week. We're not going to give you our least favorite tight end play because that's basically all the rest. I mean, these tight ends are really bad this week. Pick one. It's like yes. Mark Andrews is super expensive and he's the only good tight end like out there playing. And it's not even like he has a great matchup. So we're going to give you our favorite tight end play, and pretty much that's the guy we're playing this week, right? And mine is Zach Ertz against the Buccaneers. Apparently, I love this game because this is the game I think will be most high scoring in the wild card round. So that's why I have so many players from this. But 5,800, he is the 4th most expensive tight end. Again, that's how bad this tight end slate is, that Zach Ertz is the 4th most expensive. But I think it's a fair price for him. The Buccaneers have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends this season, 3rd most among playoff teams this year behind only the Rams and the Chiefs, the 2nd most receiving yards allowed to tight ends this season behind only the Chiefs. And then Zach Ertz is really the veteran of this team, right? Like they're a younger team. Jaden Daniels, a rookie, like I mentioned, and he's also on the road. So take all those Bo Nix stats that I said, and maybe you can put them to Jaden Daniels as well, but feel a little bit better about Jaden. But also, like, I just think Jaden Daniels is going to have to lean on his veteran that has so much playoff experience. And Zach Ertz has been highly involved in this offense, has been scoring touchdowns a ton as of late. So I like Zach Ertz in this matchup, and I think his 5,800 cost is very fair.
Yeah, and Ertz has really come on strong of late to be, like you mentioned, a leader, and he's taking control, and he's really been emotional about how the Commanders have saved his career playing with Jaden Daniels. He loves Jaden Daniels. They're one of the better quarterbacks he's played with, and he's had some success with various quarterbacks, going back to Carson Wentz. So Ertz is really emotional. He's going to want to play hard because he might realize, hey, any of these games could be the last game. I mean, he's played a lot, and he wants to keep his career going here. So I think Ertz and one other guy, I'll save him for tomorrow, are going to be key targets here for the Commanders. We'll talk about the deep sleepers, but I do like Ertz quite a bit. My guy, it's a little bit hit or miss, and this guy's been frustrating because, look, he has to compete with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison for some key targets, and Jalen Naylor seems to steal all the red zone touchdowns. It is TJ Hawkinson at 5,900, but the Rams are not very good against the tight end. Hawkinson missed the first game against the Rams. He might have been a difference maker in that game because the Rams do struggle covering there. They're actually okay in the pass rush. They're okay in downfield coverage. Their young defense, however, can get a little schooled in the middle of the field, and that's where things are going to open up a little bit here for Hawkinson. So, again, he could be the big difference maker for the Vikings in the second matchup here. And, again, he's at 5,900. So you look at these prices, they're very close, 5,800, 5,900. Just take a big highlighter or whatever virtual thing. Just look at these 2 price points. Don't go up, don't go down. Just right, kind of the Goldilocks here of what we're looking at tight end this week. So, yeah, Zach Ertz, TJ Hawkinson. We're going to veterans this week to come through. And again, anybody else at your own risk, including paying up for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, these would be my two options. Like if I didn't go with Zach Ertz, it would have been TJ Hawkinson. So I like that. That is it for today's episode. Tomorrow we will get into our sleeper DFS plays of wildcard weekend at each position. So we will dig deeper for you to help you. You know, every DFS lineup needs those cheaper guys. So we'll help you there. We'll get into our favorite prize picks of the week. And of course, show you our final FanDuel lineup and what we decided on. So we'll get to that tomorrow. Thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.